Well, good day to everyone, and welcome to this webinar. It's an absolute pleasure for us to host you today. My name is Mpumzi Swana from Genovate. I'm the head of learning at Genovate, and we just want to appreciate you and appreciate your time for joining us and being part of this webinar. We at Genovate, truly are honored that you've chosen us to be part of your learning journey as an innovator and as a world changer. We believe at Genovate that all Africans have the ability to be innovative, and our job is to unlock that innovation that is in you. And so we are hoping that through these sessions, and including today, we can be able to give you some key information, key skills, and key insights that can help you in your journey as an innovator or as an entrepreneur, or as someone who just purely enjoys product development. And so maybe just a little bit about myself. So I have been involved in product development for the better part of over a decade. And I've been involved in various types of initiatives. Some that you see in front of you include a app that we developed, which was more for your students, high school students. I've been involved in the development of an air conditioning system. That's us there cutting the ribbon, doing it like politicians. That's when we launch our mobile air conditioning system. I've been involved in developing products such as a wave energy converter, where we were actually trying to generate electricity using ocean waves. At some point, I was selected as one of the top 5 youth innovators in Africa in the energy space by the Energy Indaba. And also one of my companies was also selected as one of the most innovative businesses in South Africa by SAB. And so really through this journey, one wants to share the different learnings and the different school fees that one has had to pay, so that you don't have to pay it, and that you have some key insights that can help you in your business journey, on your innovation journey. And that's really our dream here at Genovate. It is really to develop a whole generation of innovators. And through these developments and through these webinars, such as today, maybe just a little bit about Genovate for those who it's your first time hearing about us. Really, we are focused on 4 key pillars. One of them being innovative thinking. We believe that each of us have the capacity to be innovative and to be able to generate intellectual property. And so we run different masterclasses on intellectual property, how to create it, how to make money out of it, and how to manage it. Well, that's one of our key pillars. And the other one is, once you then have this innovative idea, is how do you then go from an idea to an actual final product? And so we run product development classes and master classes where we actually train on how do you go from just an idea phase all the way up until a final product into the customer's hands. And so that's another one of our key pillars, product development. And then as we're developing this product, how can we use the available technologies to make our product better, make it cheaper, go to the market faster? So we look at how we can actually integrate different technologies, what we call OIR technologies or disruptive technologies, how we can converge these technologies with the product that you are actually trying to develop so that it speaks to your product. And so these are some of the other classes that we run. And then also entrepreneurship development, which is really what we're going to be speaking on today in the context of you developing your products, in the context of you trying to raise funding for your product and trying to raise funding in order to take your business to the next level. And so getting to today's exciting subject, which looks at funding, but not just sort of general funding, but funding that is directly related to the innovation or the product that you are trying to bring into the market. And today we're going to be speaking through some different types of fundings that you can tap into to fund your product at each stage of its life cycle. And I think that's going to be the important thing today, is that we will be understanding or unpacking that at each stage of our product life cycle, it will need different types of fundings. And so we then need to know which fundings speak to which stage. So some of the types of fundings that we're going to be speaking through today are the famous 3 Fs, which are your family, your friends, and any fool that actually believes in your idea. So we're going to be speaking about that. And we're also going to be speaking about grant fundings. And these come in various forms, fundings for innovation. So whether it's government funding, or whether it's competitions, or it's international grants, but basically money that you won't owe anyone at the end of the day. And another one is angel investors. And these are people that we hope to meet or bump into when we are pitching and trying to raise funding for our products. And these are essentially people that will invest into your business at lesser requirements, or lesser stringent requirements than perhaps what someone like a venture capitalist would do. And other types of funding include crowdfunding, which is really on the up and up. And I would encourage us to actually look at crowdfunding depending on the type of product that you actually are trying to take into the market. And then another one is the venture capital funding. And here in South Africa, a lot of venture capital funding is growth funding. So essentially, when you've already started probably selling your product and you already gained some traction and you now need to sort of grow to the next level, that's sort of where here in SA a lot of the venture capital sits. But there are ones that do still fund at sort of product development stage. And the last one is loans. And I'm going to say this upfront, that this is not the type of funding that we're actually going to be focusing on. And this is not the type of funding that you actually need while you're still developing your product. So the last thing you need is someone asking for their money back while you actually are still trying to develop the product to sell, to make the money to pay. So that one we are completely discouraging, especially at product development stage. Okay. So one of the key things is that with these different types of fundings that we've spoken about, one needs to ask 3 critical questions, okay? First one being, what are the requirements for this type of funding? Okay, so each funder has their own requirements for you to access their capital. And you need to, do your homework in terms of understanding what are the key criterias for my funder. And you then align, your either your business plan or your business case or your deck to you align it to that funder's sort of key criteria. All right, so you ask yourself, what are the requirements for this funder? Secondly, you ask yourself, what risks are involved with this type of funder? And risks, we mean that by one can get themselves involved in a funding agreement where maybe some of the clauses in that funding agreement either say that the intellectual property will sit with the funder and so forth. So you need to sort of understand, what are the risks involved. And one of the risks, especially with the 3 Fs, with friends, families, and those that choose to believe in you, is that if, by chance your idea doesn't work out as you had envisaged and as you had promised, what are the risks to that relationship? And so you then need to weigh, are you willing to take that risk? And how are you going to mitigate against it? Okay, so risk is very important. What are the risks involved? And thirdly, what are you willing to give up? A lot of us innovators and entrepreneurs want funding, but when the funder says, okay, if you want my money, then you must give a certain percentage, then we tend to want to step back. So so you're going to need to ask yourself, what am I willing to give up? What stake am I willing to give up? And what control am I willing to give up? Because you must understand that once you access someone's funding or someone's capital, you are no longer the sole owner of this sort of product or business that you are building, right? So you need to then know and be willing to know that you probably have to give up something at some point. And so you need to ask yourself these questions for each of these funders. So this is an important slide because it speaks to what I touched on earlier. The alignment between your product development stage and the type of funding that is required for the stage. And so for the better part of today's session, we are going to be speaking about what types of funding are appropriate for what type of stage that you're in, okay? And I'm going to be using some of the products that we've developed, that we've worked on, to demonstrate at each stage the type of funding that we access, or the type of funding that you can look at tapping into at that stage. Okay, so at the ideation stage, and this is where it's still you conceptualizing the type of product and the type of innovation that you want to do. At this stage, the actual investment into the business or into the product is actually your time. I think each of us need to remember that probably we are the biggest investors, or you are actually the first investor in your product or in your business, because the first thing that you invest is your time. And at this stage, it's you really trying to use the skills that you have or the resources that you can access around you. And this is a stage where you actually don't really want to spend much money. In fact, very little money at all. But you actually want to either use your skills that you might have or barter skills or services with people, that might have them than you don't. So for example, you see here on this picture, this was a render of a product that we were building. And so it means that we then had to get someone who is an engineer, who would be able to actually draft and draw this render. So if you don't necessarily have those skills, you can perhaps, barter services with someone who does, So if they come and make a drawing for you, and maybe you're good with accounting, maybe you'll do the books for them, or whatever sort of trade that you can offer them, for them to offer this service to you, essentially for free. Because at this stage, you're still trying to figure out, is this idea sort of feasible? Is this idea going to work? Is this idea, are people going to buy into this idea? Is there anyone who's going to be interested in this idea that I have? And so you really don't want to be spending money at this stage, okay? And a second critical factor is that at this stage, you're still trying to think about the intellectual property that you might be able to develop for this particular product, okay? So if the product that you're developing does have some form of novelty, some form of unique trait to it, that could access or that could make it to be patentable. So this is where you sort of start thinking about it, but you haven't started spending any money yet, no lawyers yet, but essentially you are the first investor. You're investing your time and you're getting people to actually try and do a lot of the leg room for you at this stage. So this is really the ideation stage. Then secondly, when you get to what we call the experimental development prototype stage. So this is where you really are building a prototype that you can be able to demonstrate how your product, might work. And so this is sort of the first real physical prototype that you are going to create. And so at this stage, that's where you sort of need the first sort of a little bit of money to start actually building your prototype. And this is the stage where raising money from the 3Fs sort of becomes important, because those can be sort of the first people that can give you money without having a lot of stringent requirements against what they give you. And secondly, this is a stage also where you can access some of the different grant fundings, that are available. So whether it's through competitions, whether you're pitching for, those small competitions that are there, or through incubation programs, right? So incubation programs are one of the great sources of this type of seed funding. And really at this stage, you're looking at seed funding. And so this is where you are, applying for different grants. So if it's an innovation and there's some novelty in South Africa, you can, look at organizations like TIA, and incubators. I want to stress enough, incubators are probably one of the best sources of funding for sort of this type of stage. And one other critical thing now for this stage, your experimental development prototype, is that this is where your intellectual property starts coming in, because most of the funders that will willing to give some form of seed funding, whether it's a grant, is they will always ask you, what patent do you have for this product? Because they want to ensure that, whatever they're investing into, it's got some form of intellectual property protection. And so this is at this stage, you can access what is essentially your first level in terms of your IP. And we do run sort of masterclasses that sort of teach you on the different types of intellectual properties and how to access them at each stage. And essentially, at this stage of your experimental development prototype, you sort of looking at a provisional patent. And what a provisional patent does is that it gives you about 12-month window for you to actually finalize on your design. So at this stage, you sort of know what you want to do, but you haven't yet, finished your product. You haven't yet completely designed the product as it's going to be. And so, as the word states, it's an experimental. Okay, so you're still experimenting with this product. And so as you experiment, you then will discover sort of new things about it, which will then feed into your intellectual property as you get closer to your finished product. And so your provisional patent comes in at this stage, and this is the one that you actually be able to show to funders when you are actually trying to raise funding. So as you see in this video here, we are working on the wave energy converter here, and that's us just simulating how the ocean waves will sort of pump liquid to an elevated stage. You see that at this stage, it's still very much experimental. It's not yet the final product. And that's sort of what you need to be able to show those different investors or funders that actually the product that you are looking to take to the market, does function and, does what you say it can actually do. Okay, so as I stated before, that this is where your incubation funding comes in, and this is where your organizations, such as TIA, and then come in, and this is where you can use a little bit of your money and of the money of those that are around you to build an inexpensive prototype. Okay. Now, once you have built this experimental prototype, you're now at a stage where you need to build what's called a fully functional prototype. And this prototype is essentially as close as you'll get to the product that you'll eventually take to market. And in some instances, it's actually, the product that you will take to market. And so to develop this type of product at this stage does require some significant amount of funding. And this is also where, remember the first one we spoke about was sort of seed funding for your prototype development, right? Your experimental prototype. Then you move from seed, you then move to, what in some circles is called either technology development funding. This is essentially where you're now developing the key and intricate parts of your product. And this is where, even when it comes to your intellectual property, to your patents, this is where you actually are finalizing in terms of this is the final product and this is the patent that will go with this product. And so for you to be able to actually pay for those types of services, it does require some significant amount of funding, well, depending on the type of product that you actually are working on, okay? And so organizations that are sort of playing in this space and that can assist in this space, are your technology funders, right? So your tiers and your incubators still do play quite a big role at this stage. But this is essentially where also you're looking at bringing in, certain types of angel investors, people who, are willing to bring in their own money for a certain percentage maybe of your company, but they are able to see what you are trying to build, okay? Because you are using your experimental development prototype to show them, and then they are then funding you on the back of that, okay? And so they are funding you to be able to build a functional or fully functional prototype. And so, for example, that's us there launching our mobile air conditioning system. And so, for example, with this product, we were funded by TIA, and they were able to fund the product development and the IP side of things. And so, at this stage, you really are using your IP, and you are using your experimental prototype to raise funding. And even the amount of funding that you are going to be asking for, it must align sort of with the type of returns that funder, might get or when they invest in you, okay? So, you can't ask for 20 million Rand funding when, maybe your product probably at best might make 10 million Rand when it's at market. So at this stage, this is where you're also doing your market research, and this is where you're able to demonstrate the potential value of your product. You're able to demonstrate the sort of your market and the amount, of money that you can actually make in that market. Okay, so this is where really your business planning comes in, your market research comes in, because if you can demonstrate at this stage that yes, Mr. Funder, you are investing 2 million Rands into this product, but my market size is this much, my addressable market is this much, and of this addressable market, this is what I'm targeting, in this addressable market, and therefore, this is the returns that you will get on your investment. And so at this stage, you sort of really need to know your numbers. Because it's not enough only just to have a great product. But at this stage, this is where a lot of the business acumen comes in, because now you are dealing with someone who's going to invest a significant amount of money into your product. And so you need to not only show them that your product has the technical ability, but that also it has the commercial viability to be able to bring returns for the money that they are investing into your business. And so this is really, really a critical stage in terms of your fundraising, okay? And this is where also, as I was speaking about, things like your crowdfunding comes in. Because even in the crowdfunding platforms, you still need to demonstrate that your product has a market and the potential amount of money it can make is this, and therefore if a person invests, this is what they might stand to make. So you really need to know your details at this stage. And I would encourage us not only to look at the local fundings for this type of stage, but to also look at what sort of international fundings are available for you at this stage, because at this stage you already have your IP, and if your product is that good, you probably already have your PCT, which allows you to file patents in different countries. Okay, so that's very critical. Now, your next stage is what's called your industrial prototype. Now, in the fully functional prototype, you are able to demonstrate that your product works. But now every product or every industry has certain standards that are a requirement for you to enter that industry and to trade in that industry. And so for you to then need to align your product with those standards. And this is where this prototype comes in. So in South Africa, you need to align it probably with your SABS, or if it's an innovative product with Agromant SA. But essentially, you are now putting in different industry standards into your product so that your market can actually have confidence in it. And this can be actually quite an expensive stage because for you to do all of those upgrades and for you then to apply for these certifications, first of all, it takes a lot of time and it might require quite a bit of capital. And at this stage, preferably, maybe you've already have some offtake agreements from potential clients. And so this is where, funders like your venture capitalists start to come in, because already you're demonstrating that you have customers or that you are starting to make money, but now you just want to get your product to be certified according to industry standards. So this is where, a lot of your venture capital might come in. Earlier stages are a very hard sell for VCs. But at this stage, you've already demonstrated that your product has the technical capabilities, has the commercial capabilities, and now you're at a stage where you actually want to grow. You're at a stage where you actually want to align with international or country standards. And so, this is where sort of your different VCs come in. And your venture capitalists also fund different industries. So you must sort of understand that the company or the VC that you are approaching, what types of innovations do they fund? Do they fund fintech? They fund, green innovations? What type of funding, what type of innovations do they fund, and what's their funding philosophy? So that you then align your product with their funding philosophy. And this word alignment again comes in, where you need to sort of align your product with their funding philosophy. And there are also in South Africa a lot of grants that you can actually access at this stage. There's a lot of grants by SABS, by TIA, by SEDA that are there to actually pay for you to get your product to meet industry standards. And so it's very important that at this stage, you already are demonstrating commercial viability, but then now you want to grow through meeting industry standards or world standards so that you can now sell to a wider group, right? So, for example, in the product that you see on this picture, that's an air conditioning system for buildings. That's an installation there at one of the universities. And so we had to get an Agromant SA certification for this product, right? So because now you are fitting your product into other systems, right? Buildings or depending on what your product, way your product operates. Okay, so there are lots of grants that are available for this type. But the key thing is that you must have already gone through all the different stages and sort of already making some revenue for you to be able to cover your costs, because these processes do take some time. Okay, so today we've really spoken about the different types of fundings that are available, or different types of funders, maybe, that can be there to support your product at each stage. So at the ideation stage, you are the investor working with those that are around you to try and build, something that you can present or that you can pitch. And then once you have that, you're pitching to someone who's going to give you seed funding for you to build your first prototype or your experimental prototype. And at that stage, you're already developing your intellectual property. And you use then your experimental prototype to raise funding for your fully functional prototype. So a lot of the time, people will have an idea and want to raise a lot of money to build a functional prototype, but and they find it difficult to do that. And so it's important that you go through the different stages, because each stage has its own lessons. Okay, and then once you have a fully functional prototype, you can then start to introduce things like your standards to get an industrial prototype that you can actually start selling in different countries or meet those industry standards that are there. And there are different types of fundings for each and every one of these. But the important thing is that you align with each and every one of them. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. And please visit our website and look out for more masterclasses that we're going to do. And you can be free to send us questions, and we'll really, really love to answer them. Thank you very much.